Good evening, Facebook viewers. We want to welcome you from around the world to Conscious Raising Conversations. We will begin momentarily as we officially go on Comcast Channel 95 and Verizon Channel 36. But welcome to the set, welcome to the show. We're delighted to have you, and you'll meet our distinguished guests and panelists in just a few minutes. Welcome.
All right. All I have to do is wait until you're ready to start. And then wait about 30 seconds and start.
He's going to come in.
No, he's going to switch to the view here in the studio control room.
I'm not understanding, Mr. Joe. I need to do what when you're ready to start? I thought you wanted me to start.
When you're ready to start, let me know. I'll wave to him. He'll switch the view to in here. And then you can
Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so we're ready to start. Is that what you're asking?
Okay.
You're ready.
Okay. Give me one more minute
Okay.
before we start.
All right, thank you.
All right, are you ready? Actually, are you all ready to go? Give us about 30 seconds and go ahead and start.
Good evening, and welcome to Conscious Raising Conversations with yours truly, Dr. Penny Sweetenberg-Lee. We are so excited tonight to have you join us again for episode 2 of Conscious Raising Conversations. Tonight, we are excited to welcome our distinguished panelists. We have in the studio tonight the Honorable Delores McQuinn of the 70th District. We have the Honorable Dr. Roscoe Cooper III from Henrico Public Schools, the immediate past chair. And we have the Honorable Frank Thornton, Henrico County Board of Supervisors, vice chair. So you can tell that we got some very important persons in here tonight, and I'm just excited. I should just tell you that I am so grateful that they took the time tonight to be with us, to just talk about a subject matter that is so important to people in general, but to African Americans and people in color in particular. Our conversation tonight is entitled, Why We Can't Wait. Midterm Elections, a Moral Imperative. And so tonight we will start our questions really informally, because I want to first celebrate these distinguished public servants. They are all servant leaders, and in my 15 years here in Virginia, I have watched them and observed them. I have been blessed by them. I have worked with them, and I want to just say on behalf of our community how much we value you, how much we esteem you, how much we thank you for your untiring, relentless commitment and dedication to the Commonwealth of Virginia, to Richmond, Henrico, Chesterfield, and all of the black churches throughout Commonwealth of Virginia. So thank you so very, very much for being here, and I mean that from the depth of my heart. I am humbled by being in your presence, and tonight I want to start by just asking you guys to share with our viewing audience who you are. I don't know when was the last time you may have spoken about just who you are, where you come from, versus going straight into a conversation on politics. So we'll start with you, Delegate McQuinn, and then we'll come to Dr. Cooper and then Dr. Thornton.
Well, before I start, I certainly want to say to you a thank you for this opportunity to speak to your listening audience and to be the president of these two great men who have made tremendous and amazing contribution to our communities overall. And so thank you. I'm most humbled by being here. Who am I? I guess if I would say that Delores McQuinn, young lady who grew up in Henrico County, well, old lady now, who grew up in Henrico County as a young lady, Eastern Henrico, and one of 12, just had family members that were spread abroad throughout the Henrico County community. But I also would say I am the mother of James Minor and Detruel, and now the grandmother of 3 young ladies that I am so proud to be able to say these are mine, the fruit of my labor, some of it anyway. And but I am a public servant who's committed and dedicated to bringing about transformational changes in our community.
Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
Well, again, I want to just echo the sentiments of one of the giants of legislation and just community service, 2 of them actually, Mr. Thornton and Delegate McQuinn. But again, thank you for everything that you do, and I'm so honored, I'm happy to be here tonight. Well, I'm Roscoe Cooper III. I have a distinctive privilege of being born in the city of Richmond, spending my first 10 years of life in the city, but then the next 38 years of my life in Henrico County, specifically the Fairfield District. I'm a graduate of Henrico High School. I work at the Rising Mount Zion Baptist Church. I'm the pastor of that congregation in Eastern Henrico County. And so I also sit on the school board for the Fairfield District. So I'm Fairfield through and through. And so who am I? I'm a man of God. I'm a pastor of a great people. I'm a father. I'm a fiance. I'm a son. Most importantly, I'm a humble servant. I'm always looking to be a blessing to others. Specifically in the area of healthcare for those who are underinsured or have no insurance, as the past chairman of the Capital Area Health Network, education as a member of the school board, but also spiritually as a pastor and community advocate. So really just, I kind of distill things through the lens of servant, but also the specificity of those areas in which I hopefully can make an impact.
Also, Dr. Supervisor, I want to thank you also for being so creative and having such a program. Kudos to you. My name is Frank Thornton. I was raised in Richmond a good while ago. I belong to a club called the Octogenarian Club.
All right.
And I'm a product of the Richmond Public Schools. So I kind of go back to that period where it was kind of a challenge for people of color. But I'd like to give honor, though, to my teachers, because they kind of raised the business for us. And so we've come a long ways. And I was educated at the junior union. I was a piece of coal. They changed that to a diamond. And so I'm pleased. It was honored to go back there to teach. 43 years I taught French.
Wow.
And so,
Parlez-vous français?
Oui, je parle français. So I just want to say that I think the thing I like the most is this community spirit. That's what we are tonight, and that's what I look forward to. Thanks again for having me.
You're welcome, welcome. So there is a running theme that seems to keep occurring on Conscious Raising Conversations. You mentioned Virginia Union University. So I must give a plug to the HBCUs.
Yeah.
And I think that all of us are products of Virginia Union, is that right?
Yes.
At some point in our educational pursuits?
I think I have the distinction of being a 2-time honor graduate.
All right, go ahead,
I don't
Dr.
know if they've done 2.
But twice, your undergraduate and your Master of Divinity.
I did, yes.
Awesome.
And Delegate McQuinn, your Master.
I also attended Virginia Union and VCU.
Oh, and
And so,
VCU, all right.
Yes.
And 43 years
Wow.
as a faculty member. Wow, that's amazing. So here's a question for the 3 of you. What led you to serve, to seek public office? What was the impetus that made you say, hey, this is where I'm called and being sent?
Well, since I'm the closest to you, at the time of my decision, I felt as though my life is based on the principle and the precept to whom much is given, much is required.
Yes, sir.
And so when I initially ran for school board 7 years ago, I'm a pastor, I'm a parent, I'm a community member, and I felt that, you know, I could make a bigger difference if I had a bigger platform as far as equity and equality in education, ensuring that the children, the faculty, and the staff of our schools in the Fairfield District, Eastern and Henrico, have the lens of equity and equality and inclusivity. And so I felt as though I could make that difference. I'm just grateful to the residents of the Fairfield Magisterial District who for 2 terms have given me the opportunity to humbly serve them.
And what is your district again?
I'm in the Fairfield District.
Okay.
I have the distinct pleasure of serving with Mr. Thornton. He's on the Board of Supervisors. I sit on the school board.
And I should also offer to our viewing audience that the Supervisor Nelson had a conflict tonight. The Mayor of the City of Richmond had a conflict tonight. And Congressman A. Donald McGeechan had a conflict tonight. But we really wanted to make sure that our African American elected officials had an opportunity to kind of talk to our viewing audience about the importance of the election. So thank you for representing Fairfield tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Sweetler, there is a quote that, and I hope I don't get it wrong, but it says that service is the rent that we pay to live here, to occupy space, to be a matter that position ourselves where God is positioned to be in a place and space and time. And service is what I had from the impetus really truly was my faith community, the church. Little church, New Bridge Baptist Church off of 9 Mile Road in Eastern Henrico, Fairfield District, that I attended as a little girl in a little black community with 3 streets. You go in 3 ways and you can get out 3 ways, and that was it. But the church played a major role in nurturing me, in helping me to gain confidence, to push me as a youth. At 11 years old, I was knocking on doors, and for an individual who was running for at that time city council, and that individual would eventually become the mayor of the city, would become a senator, and just one of the phenomenal civil rights leaders of our time, and that was Senator Henry Marsh. But the church had us engaged in making certain that we understood the dynamics of the time, Mr. Thornton, that there was, we were given the privilege of trying to bring about changes by, you know what, informing us and educating us on things that were happening, you know, in, I guess, socially in the various communities. I probably had no clue what I was doing, okay? I was doing what I was told. But the bottom line is that mentoring and instilling in me the opportunity to serve, the privilege of serving, have stayed with me all of these years. And it was the church. The church was so engaged in helping to make certain that we were doing something other than coming there and sitting there on Sunday listening to a message.
And I think the church has played a vital role in all of our lives here tonight.
And I would like to say that the church played a major role in my life too. And I have to suffer for this, but there's a preacher by the name of Mrs. Clara Jones that never told thank you. She carried me to every Pentecostal church. I didn't want to go, but then helped to form me as a person.
Yes.
And then I connect with that, the black school. When I was in Richmond, had 2 schools for blacks and 2 schools for whites. And at the black school, they taught us to be the best every day. And so I got this word about attendance meeting one night. A young man ran for office in 1983. First time running, name was Larry Jones. And I always knew you don't win the first time, maybe take twice to run. And the second time Larry had gone, he got another job in Atlanta, and they had this little short guy to win, a guy named Frank Thornton, and that's how I got involved. But I've learned that from black school and from the church. It's okay to complain, but also learn to serve.
Yes. Do you all consider serving as public servants in your elected roles? Do you consider that serving God as a part of your calling to ministry? in that particular context? Anybody expound on that?
Well, I'll start since I'm a pastor and a preacher. For me, I was born to preach. So for me, fundamentally, I'm walking in my assignment and I'm walking in my anointing.
And I might say, you are a preacher.
Yes, Lord.
You somebody's preacher,
Yes,
Dr. Cooper.
yes.
No,
yes.
I say that.
Absolutely.
I say that sincerely. I was
Yeah.
just saying to someone the other day that oftentimes the conflict that individuals have is because they're not sure about their assignment and their anointing.
That's right.
Every creature that God creates, there's an anointing and assignment on your life. Jeremiah 29:11 says, I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord.
Preach.
That none of us are here by happenstance, but by God's divine providence.
That's right.
And so in any context that I'm in, that is the lens that I distill my service, distill the lens of my spirituality. And so I do have this calling, and so no matter where I am, that's first and foremost in what I do. So yes, they're not mutually exclusive, they're mutually inclusive,
Yes.
and they are definitely one and the same.
I don't know how to provide service without ministry.
Mm.
I don't know how to, develop my positions, to research, without having really, in many ways, I guess, a consultation with God. Okay, what should I do and where should I go? And I often tease folks and I say, you know what, I prefer perfect prayer at the General Assembly with my eyes wide open.
Yeah.
All right. I know that's right.
Because it's absolutely necessary. But the service, people talk about me being passionate about what I do. Well, I mean, that is because I think what I try to give is what I would expect for myself. And I don't want to give less of myself when I'm serving others and serving God. And maybe I should put it first, serving God and then serving others.
That's right.
God has called me for this service, and to whom much is given, much more is expected, required.
That's right.
And I have always said, I don't want to look in the mirror and dislike who I'm seeing in the mirror, because I've not done the service of God first in serving His people. So it's definitely a ministry.
I kind of see something I've talked about sometimes is going to college. I didn't like washing dishes. I think I got a whipping for not washing dishes. And none of the council looked out for me, but I got this job washing dishes because my mother was a waitress. And with that job, I was able to pay my own way through college. So people ask me, my wife said, well, you don't have to wash the dishes. I don't know how to wash the dishes. So I think I was taught theologically that sometimes you think something that you dislike, it could become lemonade instead of a lemon.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned about theology,
Yes.
Don't say what I dislike as much as how can I learn from it. And that's what theology has taught me.
That's good. That's good. I wonder if we could take just a few minutes, and we'll start with you, Mr. Thornton, and share about the composition of the Henrico Board of Supervisors, the number of supervisors they are, and specifically maybe talk about any positions that you hold or committees that you serve on, and then we'll come to Delegate McQuinn and then to Dr. Cooper.
Right, in Henrico County, we have 5 members of the Board of Supervisors, and they are not called council manager positions, but they're called Board of Supervisors, and there are 5 magisterial positions there. And so I represent the Fairfield District. So I was elected in 1995, took office in 96, and been there ever since. And when I first began, there were 4 Republicans, I was the only Democrat. So the Henrico at that time has changed, and I think that's our responsibility, make sure we change, but with a different context. That's making sure we have more inclusion, that we have more people at the table, that we don't just want for one group. And finally, I'll just say, one of the challenges I had, we had the East-West schism in Henrico. We're trying to make Henrico one instead of a duality of a county.
And the composition for the General Assembly, there are 100 House seats and 40 Senate seats. I'm in the House of Delegates, and we have, the composition is 51 Republicans and 49 Democrats, which makes us the minority in the scheme of things. It also helps you to understand how imperative it is that you work across the aisle, that you work with others to get legislation through and to bring people along in terms of the challenges of so many of the communities that many of us represent. And some people may not understand. I mean, you have the urban, you have the rural area, and then you have certainly the suburban areas. But we don't, even though there are people with similarities across the Commonwealth, you still have pockets of communities and localities that may not necessarily have the same challenges as others. And so I don't expect the rural areas to necessarily understand what's going on in urban communities. But what I do expect you to do is sit down and listen and hear my voice and my me trying to educate you on what's going on and why it's imperative that I get support or others get support to help to bring about changes for the people of those kind of communities. And likewise, the urban community, the rural community needs support from the urban, those who represent the urban areas. And a lot of times, again, the answer is working across the aisle.
And Delegate McQuinn, you have served in the past as Chair of Transportation.
Yes, and I'm still on Transportation and on the Appropriation Committee, Transportation and General Laws. Yeah.
So the school board mirrors the Board of Supervisors. So in Henrico County, we have 5 individuals that represent 5 magisterial districts. And I am a representative of the Fairfield District. But as Delegate McQuinn so eloquently alluded to, it's imperative to be able to collaborate, to communicate in order to not just serve your magisterial district, but to serve the citizens, the students, and the families of Henrico County. Because we're only as strong as our weakest link, in that we don't want any weaknesses, we just want strength. And I think that iron does sharpen iron. And so it's important that you're able to function in that context collaboratively and communicatively, so that we can move the needle forward in ensuring the best education for our students.
Speaking of students, Dr. Cooper, I applaud you. We follow Facebook and we keep up with what's happening in our community, and I am always inspired because you show up at almost every event that's going on at the schools. I guess the question for the panel would be, how has the pandemic and the civil unrest and all that has happened in our community, how has that affected our school system and maybe even the districts that we're serving? Any comments or discussion?
I would, let me just say something about that. I served on the school board for the city of Richmond for 10 years prior to going to the city council and then general assembly. But what I witnessed during the period that I served was many young people being born, and they were crack babies. We went through a period of time, and we're still dealing with probably some of those. But many children were being born, and it was during that era when crack was, when the proliferation of that was just awful in various communities. And we tried our best to fight that and to deal with that in many ways to no avail, because those kids, some of them just, their lives were not as productive as it should have been. I've told people, and I've used this over and over again, that what we're going to find ourselves will be this pandemic babies. We're going to find COVID babies, okay? They're coming through now, and we're seeing the aftermath in many ways, and it's still not over, of people and kids living through a period that they didn't have the support system that they needed. And in many ways, I guess communities, we didn't see it coming. We didn't know what it would be or what it would look like. But we're going to have kids in our school systems that are going to be failing miserably. And what I tried to do to undergird them by asking the state to put money in particularly more disadvantaged communities to
Yes.
help support those young folks for after-school programs and many other programs that would help support them. But we are finding ourselves right now in that situation where these are COVID kids who have lived through this period and didn't get the support that they need.
Well, I can speak specifically to, thank you for your service with the school board. But, you know, when I think of the Fairfield District, I bulleted some of the concerns that issues we're facing. One is inside the building. We have HR-related concerns, human resources. We have to make sure that our schools are adequately staffed, ensuring we have sufficient and quality human resources, and rewarding, recruiting, and retaining teachers in our schools, as well as support staff. We've had bus driver shortages, as well as support staff shortages. So HR is so important. But then secondly, to Delegate McQuinn's comment, you know, we have to intentionally and intensively tackle pandemic-related concerns.
Yes.
Addressing learning loss and achievement gaps due to the pandemic, addressing the social, emotional needs of our students as a result of any trauma that they may experience from losing loved ones during the pandemic. Many of them suffered from isolation as well as lack of social interactions. Mr. Thornton and I had a candid conversation. He brought up that one thing that the pandemic has exacerbated is that we are social people.
Yes.
And no one really, to her point, knew the impact that the isolation was going to have. And then also, as we know, ensuring that our schools are safe. We know what happened in Richmond on Friday, what happened in Henrico Monday and Tuesday, and even in St. Louis. Our hearts go out to the community of St. Louis who lost lives at school today. We have to ensure that we continuously address the issues of safety, issues of bullying, as well as potential threats. But then secondly, I want to say that the school is a microcosm of the community.
That's right.
And so when we talk about the internal nature of the school, we have to also talk about the external nature of the communities. So our students are suffering issues, our families are facing in the community. Many of our students are dealing with trauma from their communities, escalating violence, illegal gun control issues, affordable housing crisis, housing insecurity, food insecurity. And so we have to ensure that wraparound services are provided that not only address what's happening in the building, but also what addresses outside the building. And it's going to take a unilateral effort from the state, from the county, and from the school division to ensure that we do everything we can to let them know that they are supported, that they are loved, and that we're doing everything we can to make them life ready, whether it be enrolled in college, whether it be employed in a job, or enlisted in the armed services.
Yeah, I like that. Life ready.
I would just like to say, I really agree with my esteemed colleagues here. And I think the other emphasis that we need to watch and put forth some effort is with the family now. That's where it all starts. And I think we got to have programs. And this is not new to us. We've done this before. So we got to get back to what I call our culture and the things that made us what we are today. But we got to shore up the family.
Yes.
And many of the challenges that my colleagues have mentioned, these are things we're going to have to deal with. And because of that. Now, as someone did say, the fact that we got through COVID, number one at least, kind of shows you one of our weaknesses, that is we are social beings,
Yes.
and we got to have that input with each other. And so we're going to have to see how we make that, I call it expansion, from what we have now to what's going to happen in the future. I'm thinking that in the future, we're going to have COVID shots just like we have flu shots. But all this is related to our young people, which is our future. And we got to make sure that we don't let them down. So we got to put in, finally, some good after-school programs. And I want to thank, here's a kudos for Delegate McQuinn when she was telling about what she's done. She also gave us a brand new tool for the community called the CVTA, Central Virginia Travel Authority. Under her sponsorship,
All right now.
the 9 districts, planning districts now, will have a new tool to make sure we have better highways and better roads for all of that. And this has come from that African tradition that we have.
That's good. Well, why don't we, this is a great segue into a question. Why don't we celebrate some of your accomplishments? There are some major accomplishments that each of you have made in your own way, in your own right, in these roles. I can think of a few, but I'd like you to kind of share with our viewing audience so that they know just how committed and how busy you guys have been. Thinking of the slave trade.
I know, I did.
Well, so I'm really grateful and thankful that my stewardship on the board, we made history in Henrico. We hired the first woman superintendent, Dr. Amy Cashwell, and she's doing a phenomenal job. I think that with our planning and our research, we ensure that the county funds are distributed across the county. When we talk about projects, I'm excited that we were able to build 2 high schools simultaneously, as well as a major renovation at a middle school, at Holiday Elementary School, simultaneously J.R. Tucker, Highland Springs High School. I'm very excited that we voted, we got passed. We're going to be building a brand new Virginia Randolph facility.
Really?
Yes, we are.
Wow.
Honoring that phenomenal woman.
Yes.
And so that campus will be phenomenal to not just her legacy, but also the future.
Dr. Cooper, would you tell our audience, for some of those who may not know who she is, just a little bit about her?
Virginia Randolph was one of the most phenomenal educators the county of Henrico and the state of Virginia had. From a one-school classroom, she educated generations when there was nowhere else and no one else to educate us. So if you don't know who Virginia Randolph is, please research who this wonderful educator was, and she's been a blessing. And then also the job that Dr. Monica Mann's done, equity, inclusion, and diversity, in a time in which there's rhetoric trying to dismantle equity, equality, opportunity, and inclusion. Henrico Public Schools, we still respect that work. We still work on that work, and we're going to still make sure that the work gets done. So really excited about just a few things that we've done.
That's awesome. Thank you.
And thank you. But Holland Springs, I graduated from Holland Springs High School in Eastern Henrico, and I attended Virginia Randolph 1 year, but there are 5 brothers and sisters, well, 1 sister and 4 brothers that graduated from Virginia Randolph.
Oh, wow.
So they're going to be happy to hear that they're going to build a new Virginia Randolph.
That's right.
But my work, one of the things that I have certainly been committed to over the last almost 20 years is to the preservation of African American history. I have been, and that's a calling. It's just a calling upon my life, and you know, no matter how I try to exit it, I can't, and the ancestors would not allow me to, and that's the bottom line. But we are at a place now that we have created a slave trail. We have put signage on that trail, and we're in the midst right now. We have been able to raise about $21 million, but we are going to be building a museum down in an area in Shockoe Bottom that I have passed 1,000 times, and only about 25 years ago did I find out that it was one of the most notorious jails on the East Coast, okay? And the slave trade in the Richmond area was second to New Orleans. How do you live here all your life and was not made aware of that? But it was buried about 20 feet under. That Lumpkin slave jail, where the wife who was enslaved, wife married, or well, unofficially, was married to Robert Lumpkins. And not only was it a slave jail, and I call it the 5 E's. Enslavement went on there. Emancipation of the slaves went on there. Education eventually, because Virginia Union University was birthed right there on that site.
That's right.
And now there's been enlightenment after that, and we're still in a place of empowerment.
I like that, 5 E's.
But we're going to do it. We will do it, and the hope is that we will build, not the hope, it will happen, a museum that will celebrate the history of African Americans in Virginia, but not just Virginia's history. This is Americans' history, and we want to make sure that we leave for generations yet to come this story and this history. Not just that has been buried. We want to make certain that we bring life to it.
And to date, did I hear you say that you've raised over 21
Yeah,
million?
$21 million.
Is there anything that, any appeal that you'd like to make to our viewing audience?
Absolutely, absolutely.
How we can help?
Yes, we can, listen, you can, first of all, visit, you can take the Slave Trail tour. If you got a family reunion, we've had so many family reunions. People have come from all over the world to take the tour on the Slave Trail. But again, we are raising money for this. And so somewhere around $200 million will need to be raised for this particular endeavor. And we're going to need everyone's help to help us get that accomplished. And so one of the things that I do say, you need to visit the area so you can see for yourself the history that exists here and the history that was buried, but buried no longer.
All right, it's been uncovered, unleashed.
Dr. Sweetberry, I want to also say too, with the Lumpkin's jail story, which became Virginia Union, we got to give more credit to Mary Lumpkin.
Yes.
Because when I was still there, research hadn't been done. And I think Dr. Raymond Hilton at Virginia Union who brought that out. And so we got to give women more credit. As we mentioned, the great educator we have, Virginia Estelle Randolph. But also on the side of Henrico, we did not always have a PAL program, at least athletically. And I recall sharing it with my colleagues. They said, oh, we don't need that, we already have it. But if we talked and dialogued some more, they supported it. And we have today is 15 years of age. Also, you may recall that when it comes to swimming, that's a challenge for people of color. And sometimes we're the first ones to be drowned. So we now have, well, that doesn't have to happen anymore. We have an aquatic center on Burnham Avenue that kids can go to. And also in the past, one of our superintendents wasn't quite ready to work about letting youngsters to swim at an early age. Now we have a superintendent who's open to that. So there should be no kid in Henrico County over there will be drowning anymore.
Awesome.
And
let me say, can I
Yeah.
I want to say
That's false humility, and I appreciate you.
that's
But I want to say I was present, number one, when the shovel was winning the ground
All right.
for the aquatic center. I think you
I
were,
was
we
there
were all
as well.
together.
Yeah.
But the second thing, I also was present. I think you were as well.
Probably.
You finish it. You tell them.
What I want to talk about is Mr. Thornton and Tyrone Nelson has been instrumental.
Before we go there, forget it. The aquatic center is named after him. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
The aquatic center is named after Frank Thornton.
He didn't say that, and I appreciate that, but
He's so humble.
he did.
But he is.
We have to just say that. So.
But we are so proud of Mr. Thornton and Tyrone Nelson on the Board of Supervisors because they have basically helped to transform the eastern part of Henrico County. Okay, libraries.
I was getting about to say, what about that beautiful library?
Schools, brand new schools. It is because individuals like yourself sit there in those seats and you realize, you know what, I'm here, this is our time, and this is the time for us to make a difference for the people that we live among and that we serve. And I thank God for you all and what you have been able to accomplish. Okay, and the center should be named after you, absolutely.
Which it is.
And it is. It is.
That is awesome. Well, congratulations. I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
That's why Conscious Raising Conversations is an opportunity for us to educate and to inform and to celebrate and to share tips and strategies on how we as a community, in particular African American community, can do better and be more effective. Let me ask one final question and then we'll move into our topic for tonight. What in your memory bank are some atrocities or childhood experiences, a childhood experience that you can recall? All of you are native Virginians, and Virginia has a rich, rich history embedded in slavery. And I'm wondering, how has that memory contributed to the passion and the commitment and the dedication and the drive that you all possess?
if you will allow me, since elders have a little advantage,
Yes.
having been raised in Richmond and having to sit in the back of the bus, having been raised in a period where you couldn't go to the front door, or to the side or back door, and even shopping, people were indignant to you and didn't treat you with the respect they should have in downtown Richmond, all that. But along with that, something I had mentioned earlier was some of those black teachers that some of us had. And they told us every day, be the best, be the best. And some of us started believing that and started doing that. They helped turn us around so we could see that we are people called possibility persons. And that's the thing I like about what happened. Turn, you know, a lemon situation to a lemonade situation.
Yes.
That made all the difference. And it told us also, hey, keep on working. Don't just complain, but bring solutions and put those on the table.
That's good.
That's what I think.
That's good.
We were taught.
My fondest memory of any atrocity or something that in many ways traumatized me was the community that I was raised in, a little place called 3 Streets called Bungalow City, okay? And it was one night the KKKs came through that community and bombed the only store business that we had in that little community. They bombed the store and they burned a cross and left pamphlets throughout our community. That next morning when everybody got up and, you know, we were closely tied together houses and so people talking across the fence. But I remember my father and his eyes, the fear of what had happened. And the community, how they decided to come together and say, well, you caught us last night, but you won't do this again to us. And there was the men of that community that were very instrumental in standing up and stepping up. But you know, some of that stuff had left me. When the fight, when the march in, or the protest in Charlottesville came about, it brought all of that stuff resurfaced. It was like living it over again and seeing my father's eyes all over again. And I talked to my sisters and brothers, and they too were reliving the trauma of that time. I'll never forget it. But over the years, it had just been on the hard drive, no need to pull it up. And when the situation in Charlottesville, it all became so real once again.
We appreciate that moment of sharing.
Yeah, that's it.
For me, the fondest memory, some more recent memory, within the last 20 years, there was a realtor who I spoke to, a white gentleman, and he was at a function where I was at, and I found out what he was, and I told him where I was about to purchase my home in the Eastern Henrico community. And he says to me, are you sure that you want to buy a house in that neighborhood? I says, why is that? And he said, well, because that house is zoned for Henrico High School. Do you really want your children graduating from Henrico High School? Unbeknownst to him, I graduated from Henrico High School, and so I had no problem saying I want my children to graduate. So I asked the gentleman, I said, well, what high school did you graduate from? He says, I graduated from Godwin High School. And so I said to him, point blank, I said, you all think about us now just as what y'all thought about us then. Just like Mr. Thornton spoke earlier in regards to the perception of East versus West. That West is better, East is less than. And so I became even more galvanized to ensure that with every fiber I fight for my community, the community that I love, the community that I represent, the community I live in, I work in, I raise my children in, pay my taxes in, because I'm here to tell you that Eastern of Henrico is as great as, or not as great as any district in this county. So, just the perception of people, right? Some people, perception is reality. We've got to constantly try to change that perception because, in essence, oftentimes they project onto our children the same kind of quality as being less than because of where they're from. We've always had to overcome obstacles.
Always.
We've always had to do more with less. We've always had to represent those heroes and sheroes who've come before us.
That's right. Let's get into why we can't wait, and why we need to say to our viewing audience tonight, all over the country, that midterm elections are important. We cannot sit back and not cast a vote. Why is it an imperative? Why should we and why do we need to go to the polls? And what's on the ballot, or what referendums and or positions on the ballot that you might want to share is important tonight. Of course, we are bipartisan, and we will not be pushing our particular candidates because this is Comcast cable public access. However, it is important for us to educate our folks.
May I begin?
Yes, sir.
Start with Henrico County. That we have a bond referendum that's coming up, and there are 4 projects or items that citizens need to think about. The schools involved in that. Also, and I think that's $348 million for schools. Fire stations, $37 million. Recreational parks, and also first time for flooding and drainage. Very important. Now, this voting issue is ballot issue, very important. The referendum is important. I'm telling people they should support it. That's my job.
Yes.
But the other thing is that voting is critical to people of color. Always has been, always will be. And also, for those of us who've been around a long time, we got to understand our role in voting. And we have got to make sure we tell everyone else in the community how important it is, because we've given our life for it. But finally, and more importantly, we have been the ones that have saved this country.
Yes.
A lot of people just don't understand that configuration. So that's why voting is important. So you can't ever say, I ain't gonna vote, because when you don't vote, you really do vote.
That's right.
Voting, you know, I look at this and I often, people say, you know, I don't think anyone's listening to that any longer, but I'm still going to tell it until they listen, hear me. Can you hear me? Our ancestors, they carried the mantle of discourse for us, okay? So that I would have a right to vote. The brunt of what was of suffering, they had to take it.
Yes.
For us. And so as an African American, to think that I don't have an obligation to represent them, to honor them by going to the poll is, you know, you're talking about injustice.
Yes.
That would be the greatest injustice that I could serve to those who have gone on and whose shoulder I stand on. Voting is a right.
Yes.
It is a right that's been taken from us before, and now that we have it, we've got to utilize that as a tool to help to bring about changes. But the other thing is, they're trying to dismantle democracy. Okay, there is an all-out assault.
That's a good word, assault.
Okay, on democracy. If democracy goes, it was democracy that got us to this point, okay, particularly as African American community, okay? Because you couldn't say that the 13, 14, 15 amendments were for those folks over there and wasn't for us. And so we had to fight to get there. But the bottom line is, people ought to look at what has happened so that they would have the privilege of going to the polls and voting for something, no matter what it is. Educate yourself and then move forward to make it happen. Yeah. But it's too many people suffered and died. Too many. Okay.
Well, I feel like I've been set up. I mean, you allowed me them to say it all. But all I want to add is to both of their points. You know, I want to come from an angle of it's important for our young people to get re-engaged.
Yes.
We all saw what happened after the George Floyd verdict. We saw what happened first and foremost when he unfortunately was murdered by police, which that's what it was. We saw the engagement of our young people, the outrage that they showed in our communities with protesting and being present. But that same presence and that same engagement has dissipated when it comes to actively being involved in the civil responsibility of voting. I've talked to many young people who feel that voting is not important, that voting is not imperative. And it's that apathetic attitude
Yes.
that has been very detrimental for us as a community. Because your vote is your voice, your vote is your choice.
Yes.
And you need to elect people who share your same values when it comes to education, voting rights, gun control, a woman's right to choose. I mean, we can go down the list. And, you know, it's important that we tell our young people, please join this fight, because we need every age, we need every gender, we need every race to come together to in essence, fight back the all-out assault
Yes.
on our voting rights.
Yes.
Yes.
Locally, statewide, as well as nationally.
Yes, and there's a I mean, why, if it wasn't important, why is there an all-out effort to suppress it? So suppress our voting rights. That right there speaks volumes to
It
what's
speaks
going on.
volumes.
Yes.
And I want us to take a minute to say to our viewing audience, and especially to our Facebook viewers as well, we are talking here in Virginia, we are talking about the state in which we reside, but we encourage all of us to go to the polls. Folks in Georgia need to go to the polls.
Pennsylvania,
Pennsylvania need to go to the
Michigan.
polls. Michigan need to go to the polls.
Arizona.
We need you to vote. Cast your vote. Exercise your right to vote. Let me also say that if you have a question for us tonight, it is 6:50. We invite you to call 804-646-7172. Please call 804-646-7172, and we will allow you to ask a question or make a statement to our panelists tonight.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yes, sir.
I think oftentimes the attitude is an attitude of entitlement. And I think that what persons don't understand is that when you did not sacrifice this, when you did not work for this,
Right.
when you did not put the blood, sweat, and tears, walk against barking dogs, fire hoses, be killed,
My,
you
my.
don't understand
Right.
that entitlements aren't in perpetuity. And so in order to maintain it,
Yes.
you gotta continuously
Yes.
fight
We got to
for it.
continue to
Yes,
fight for
yes,
it.
yes.
I had an experience some 4 or 5 years ago when a person with a disability shared with me, African-American female, that they did not vote. And I literally almost fainted because I could not comprehend how it were possible to be female, African-American, and a person with a disability and not understand the importance of voting. I want to say to those persons with disabilities, because it's one of the hats that I wear, that there is curbside voting.
Yes.
So when you go out to the polling locales, you just simply need to let them know that you need to be serviced. So there is no excuse why a person with a disability cannot go and cast their vote. I also want to share that there are 2 upcoming Saturdays. October the 29th, we have a caller. October the 29th and November the 5th. All day Saturdays where you can cast your vote. Good evening, Conscious Raising Conversations. How may I help you, please?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for taking my call. I'm of the opinion, and I won't hold you, I'm of the opinion that voting is worthless, a worthless exercise. And I would like the panel to give me a few tangible things that voting has gained, that black people have attained through voting over the years since we've been in this country, something tangible.
Thank you, sir. That's a wonderful question. We will answer. Thank you so much. So, he thinks that voting is worthless, and he wants us to perhaps identify a few things of why or what we have accomplished. Any responses?
I would hope that when a person goes to the poll to vote, that they are educated enough to understand that the individual voting brings about representation. And that representation are the individuals like these 2 on the side of me that fight for education and make sure that we have new schools and new communities. We have communities where young people are given opportunities to learn. I mean, when you're in those positions, you're fighting. Like I'm on the appropriation for dollars to make sure that certain dollars go in certain direction. you know, the Board of Supervisors. We have new libraries, two new libraries right on Laburnum Avenue within miles. I know that because we voted for Mr. Thornton.
That's right.
That Mr. Thornton was instrumental in helping to make that happen. If he was not there and wasn't committed to education and committed to transformational changes in our community, guess what? It would still be as it was, okay? And that was not a good, okay, place for those who lived in eastern part of Henrico. But the new schools that have been brought about, the new libraries, the aquatic center, you just name it. It is because individuals like the two who are sitting here have brought about, helped to bring about those changes because we voted for them.
So representation matters.
Yes, yes.
Good afternoon, good evening. Conscious Raising Conversations, how may I help you, please?
Yes, I was calling because I had questions / comments about today's program.
Okay. Yes.
Yes, I heard the mention of the PAL program, Police Athletic League.
Yes, ma'am.
And 20 years ago, there was a project that was funded by the Department of Justice called Justice-Based After School Program, in which police officers would be getting grants to work with, like the Police Athletic League, the PAL program. But something happened and the program didn't get funded. Imagine what would have been different if we had had 20 years of police and youth working together. Then we would not have had some of the things that happened in Missouri with the young men being shot. Anyway, the point is that something that is needed now for police to be involved with, like midnight basketball. When I was growing up, we had Sergeant Carol taught us, we had a tennis league in Barron Park.
Okay.
Called the National Junior Tennis League. So is this something that we need to do to help our young men to develop?
Thank you so much, caller. We'll send that question to Mr. Thornton.
Well, you know,
Thank you for your call.
I just think that it's very important for us to kind of know how to solve issues dealing with us. And I guess maybe I'll tell you very quickly. When I was first elected, I got this letter from this young man. Said, Mr. Stone, people hanging on the street corners, they need a place to go. As a result of that, I went to my colleagues, and we have now the recreation center. So we got to continue to do things like that. And we lost a few after-school programs, and we're getting those back. So what we got to do is take a look at what we used to do that worked, and make sure we put some funding into it so we'll continue to work. So I think that is one need that we need to continue.
We are running out of time, and I want to ask one final question, and then I'll give some closing remarks. How can the community and the church help in the next several weeks? Because voting is on Tuesday, November the 8th. The polling sites open at 6 a.m. and they close at 7. You can still vote up through November 8th. Absentee ballot. And I was mentioning before we got the phone call that on October the 29th, this coming Saturday, and November the 5th, Saturday, all day, put it on your list. Go shopping, go to the movies, but go cast your vote also on those Saturdays if you're unable to go on the actual voting day, which is November the 8th.
So as a pastor, let me just say there's 3 things that I believe the church community can do. Number 1, be a supplier of information. Let our congregations know about upcoming elections and what's at stake. Secondly, help with mobilization efforts, get out the vote initiative, sow suppose, providing transportation for those with issues, as well as education and outreach, being active, engaged throughout the year, not just election time. But that's 3 things I can say specifically I feel we can do.
And I think that it's imperative, it's very important that the church and the faith community be instrumental in getting the message out, education, but also social media. Most of them now have social media. Should be blasted now with information and education on voting, when, where, or why, all of those things. And I think that we have been in the past. Again, I got started in the church. and helping to be involved in the political process. We should go back to that time when we are engaging and involving young people, but also those who are members in getting to the polls to bring about the changes.
And Dr. Sweetberg needs to be part of the political process. We have to be persons of possibility.
Yeah.
That's what people of color have always done, and we don't undo that by not voting. It makes a difference to be at the table, and voting gives us an opportunity to be at the table to make decisions which affect us.
Awesome. Listen, I feel this in my spirit, so I'm going to use the time for this. All of you are mentors to me, and I honor you in that way. What, very quickly, in 30 seconds, each of you, what would you say to those who may be aspiring to become public servants? What characteristics or qualities do we need to start early? We talk about the young people, our future. What would you say to them? One last comment as we go out tonight.
Lifelong learner, humility, service, putting others above yourself.
The heart to serve, and with the heart to serve, then the heart to, again, to engage in communities early, start early, and be instrumental in helping to connect with communities in which you're representing or which you're living in.
And remember to be a bumblebee. A bumblebee is not supposed to fly. But nobody ever told the bumblebee he wasn't supposed to fly because his body is larger than his wings, but he flies because he believes in himself. And that's what we have to do.
All right, awesome.
Let me say thank you to our guests tonight. I know you guys are going to blow all kinds of loves and hearts and all of that good stuff. Thank you for joining Conscious Raising Conversations tonight. We are delighted to have you with us. We invite you to come back on next Monday as we entertain widows and widowers. We have part 1 and part 2. We're going to have a candid conversation with those who have lost spouses. And then following those episode 2 and 3, we will conclude this season and see you in the spring quarter with a conversation with NBA great Terry Davis, who has written a book, Second Baptism. And so we look forward to you joining Conscious Raising Conversations over the next 3 weeks. Thank you again, and I will end with the quote that Delegate McQuinn started with: service is the rent we pay for the privilege of living on the earth. God bless you. Good night.